Welcome to our panel. The globalization is related with both economy and the social life and transformed the people, the societies, and cities are the main place for this transformation. Urban places are the places where people come together and socialize and create a mutual identity. People has many requirements, and these public spaces were created based on these requirements as physical places. These are social glues, these public spaces. The people's Our session today is related with transformation of public spaces in the era of post-globalization and its effect on user behavior. Caused many changes in the society in terms of economy and social life. Urban places, urban spots are among the most important places where this change, transformation occurred. Cities are places where people create mutual identities, and people has requirements, and these public spaces are the place where creates this physical place for having a bridge between the yesterday and today. So the citizens of a city should have public spaces if we must talk about the social life in a city. Now I'm going to pass the word to Mr. Ali Kılıç, my scholar Ali Kılıç, for giving his keynote. Thank you so much, hocam. The public spaces and the public benefit are related with each other, directly linked. Those concepts are linked directly. For that reason, the public spaces has many deep connections with the public benefit, and if this connection gets deeper, then the planning is done better, and the public properties are mainly related with this connection gets deeper. So when we just look at this issue, we see the 1980s as an important time span, and the public benefit, the public area, and the concepts of usage of these public areas were getting a little bit differentiated in the 1980s. Let's say the public areas in the 1980 during the term of globalization had changed their qualifications, actually quality, and the public properties should be used for the public benefit actually. But the globalization affected this thing in a negative manner. But when we look at the period before 1980, the existence of public areas are really important facts for easing the life in the cities. And after 1980, we see the effect of globalization, and the capitalism, and the capital has the right to say every word, and the capital owners' words are much stronger after the globalization, and the public spaces were influenced negatively from this concept. So with the effect of globalization after 1980, the public areas started to get a concept like customers. But a public area could not have customers if we are talking about public benefit. So, in this case, what these things brings is that the public areas would not be used easily and would not be accessed easily. So the distribution of these public area were limited with the globalization especially. And when we just made these kind of evaluations about this issue, the public properties are lost their attribute to be used for the sake of public benefit, I think. When we look at the era before 1980, the public area were gathered throughout confiscation, let's say. If you want to make a confiscation, you need to buy a private property for public purposes. For that reason, the confiscation, or there are two types of confiscation, either buying a private property or just getting a grant as the heritage, as the hereditary from one person. So this definitely depends on the usage of private property in public property. So if the owner of the private property is happy with his rights on his private property, then he just gives some part of his property to the public as public area. So the public properties were really important at 1980s, before 1980s. And after 1980s, when we come to the post-1980 period, time span, we see that private sector gets into the game. And when they get into the game, some public spaces and some public usages were getting privatized. And some of them, the most remarkable of them, are that, let's say, the education facilities were privatized, and then some health services gets privatized, culture, art, these types of public properties get into the private properties ownership at some places. And for that reason, the public usages created a customer relationship at the public area, public space actually. And after 1980, the regulations had been changed, as it was the 18th article of the related law. It has been implemented before 1980, but it was not that preferable at that time. But with the usage of 18th article, the public spaces were gathered by the private stakeholders. So, transformation of public spaces in the era of post-globalization and its effects on user behavior is today's subject for this session. Globalization caused many changes and transformations in the societies, and the cities are the main place for these changes. These transformations brought many different problems to the social life. The cities are places where people create mutual identity. People has different requirements, and these requirements are the main creators of the public places. The people need public spaces for having a social and economic. We're going to talk about the public spaces before and after the era of 1918. Our academician Ali Kılıç is going to talk about. Go on, Mr. Ali Kılıç. Thank you so much, hocam. Okay, the public spaces, the public benefit, these two concepts are directly interrelated with each other. These two concepts are directly related with each other. For that reason, the public spaces are directly related with the public benefit, and in the periods where the relationship gets stronger and deeper, the planning was a lot more easier. And the public properties are really important medians for these. And the public properties, along with the public properties, these concepts constituted the base for the urban development. And 1980 is an important time frame where this change standed importantly. For instance, before the 1980 and after the 1980, these different time spans are really different in terms of this relationship. This relationship had differentiated very intensely before and after 1980, because the public spaces and public properties and the public usage of these properties for the sake of public benefit had influenced in a negative manner after 1980. When we go back to the era before 1980, the existence of public areas were deeply related with the implementation of the plans that were implemented for the sake of easing the life in the city. And after the 1980 period, when we go to the post-1980 period, with the effect of the capitalism, with the effect of globalization and the reign of the capital, reign of the capitalists, the capital owners, the public areas and the public benefits influenced negatively from this change. And after the 1980, with the effect of globalization, the public usage, in the space of public usage and public properties, the concept of customer had been arised. So the public benefit, the concept of public benefit get crippled due to these changes. And this brought something along with itself. The free usage of the public area were limited, and the access to the public area was limited, and the distribution of the public area was limited and decreased due to this globalization. And within this context, when we just made our evaluation, we can state that the public properties would not be used based on the public benefit after the 1980 period. And this thing stresses the importance of the usage of public properties for the sake of public benefit. When we check to the before 1980 period, there are two possibilities for having public spaces. It is through confiscation. The confiscation must be done from a private property, and a property should become a public property. There are two ways of confiscating. Either one public, one private owner waivers his rights on a property, or the public just buys the private property. And this depends on the utility of the private property. Let's say if the private owner is happy about his usage for his private property, he's happy to waiver some of his rights to the public as public area. But this was dependent on the decision of the private owner, and the city's development was a problem, a complex problem that caused irregularities on this waivers. For that reason, the public benefit and public properties were really important at that time. And when we come to the 1980, post-1980 period, the private sector get into the game, and some some public properties and public usages get privatized. So to give examples about this is the education institutions, healthcare institutions, culture and art institutions that is related with the public usage were privatized into the private properties, and these things got affected by the privatizations. And as I stated before, the public usage and the public benefit was limited, and the customer relationship was created in the public area. And after 1980 period, there were some changes in the regulations regarding this. The 18th article was among the most important. What was the 18th article? It was there before the 1980s, but it was not very preferred. With the usage of 18th article, the public spaces, an equality principle should be used when public spaces were privatized in accordance with the 18th article. So the private properties can be confiscated for some planning usages by the government without voluntary basis. The 18th article was that the government was confiscating the rights of the private owner in accordance with the plan, and this was causing the equal participation of various private owners into the public space. This was really just at that time, but applying these law was a really important problem in the well-established cities, but this law was mainly applied in the newly developing cities. Due to usage of this law, the public area, the access to public area was become a lot more easier, yes, but this should not be a tool for using the public property as private property after 1980, let's say. So after the private industry, private sector get into the game and used these public areas for the sake of trade, as using the citizens as customers created big time problems, especially accessibility among the most important of these problems. One of the most important of these problems are that these public spaces does not have an equal distribution and balanced distribution. And the public properties were really important for this, for the distribution, equal distribution of these facilities for the public. And an access problem had been get into the game after 1980. And another problem was that the public places, actually the public institutions does not have a good cooperation, a good coordination. An organization problem was arising in the public institutions. So some areas that get into the hand of public were not be able to use for the sake of public benefit, since there is no coordination between the public bodies, public institutions. And another problem is that some places that get into the hands of the public institutions were not used in accordance with the confiscation needs. For instance, in plan, some place can be seen as a park, but it was not used as a park, and this was not audited properly. For instance, a place is separated for the sake of education, but the National Education Ministry does not know about this fact. And this place is used as a car park, let's say, or another public usage. For that reason, both in terms of the public usage and distribution of public usages, some imbalances occur. One of the most obviously seen thing is that the open areas which should be used for the as the public area were just rented for 5 years, 10 years, or 20 years, in contrast with its main usage point. And the public institution is earning money out of this, and this system goes on, and then public benefit is going into the trash. So the auditing is among the most important problem for happening of these kind of problems. So this is a big time problem, and the thing that must be done for this is changing the laws and regulations and the usage of the public spaces in accordance with its aim. And this should be obligated by the regulations with fines, etc. This should be obligated. And the renovations and changes in a public space generally change its aim. Generally, it is rented to the private sector with renovations, like the majority of the area was getting into the use of the private industry, and people are losing the public area, and the public benefit is going out of the window. Laws and regulations must be renovated for attaining an excellent audit and the same aim for public areas should be preserved. The institutions should not be able to change this. Actually, the law is quite open about not letting this case happen, but this was not becoming enough, and the audit is the main problem here. The public areas cannot be used for private industries, by private industries, and these kind of changes in the public spaces cannot be done. Some regulations should be put into the laws for preventing these problems. And the third thing is that, along related with the public institutions, the cooperation and the communication should be established between public institutions for not letting this happen. And finally, here we can state that, especially in the shore regions of Turkey, the seaside, when we look at the seaside usage is bringing some problems along with itself. The shores and the seaside is stated to be owned by the public in our constitution and in laws. The seashores are belonging to the people of Turkey. But every person has the right to use this seashore coastal line as he or she wants. But when we look at our coastal line in those cities with coastal lines to the sea, we see that this is not possible. The public area was used by the private institutions, the private users are using these places, and people or the municipalities won't be able to use these places. This is totally in contrast with the laws and the constitution, and this should be audited very carefully, and the individuals should be able to use these public areas. To summarize, as a conclusion, I would like to say this: the public property and public area should be used for the sake of the public benefit, and this should not be waived for any other reason. This should be a must. And a plan, let's say, when we look to the situation as a plan, we should just recognize the public properties and public usage which was overseen by the regulations and laws. The government or public institutions can only use the other places as private properties after the planned public areas, the needs of planned public areas were fulfilled properly. If we want to attain a healthy urbanization, this is a must. The public benefit and public areas are really important if we want to have a healthy urban transformation, healthy urbanization. And the public benefits should be highlighted definitely, I think. And thank you so much, hocam. We thank you so much, Ali hocam. In urbanized places, there are some plan changes that are related with the public space and the public benefit. Now Feride hocam is going to talk about these things. Now today I'm going to talk about the urban life and the usage of public areas. And this talk is going to be about we can define the public area as the places where we get into interaction with the other people of the urban life. The mutual life is bringing the socialization, and the urban life is just about the unique lifestyles, and the urban life wants to affect each other, the people living in the urban life. And the public life and public area are the main places where the social life occur. Habermas states that the social area, the public area, is a place where spend some time. Habermas defines these public places as the places where people spend their time, and if we just see the Tor's definition, the public spaces are the median for the communication of social people of the urban. In another opinion, the places can be classified as public property, public area, half public area, and private area. And every type of the area has a interaction with each other, and they affect each other. And the individual control is really important, and these spaces should be any other person living in the city. According to Jackson, if we must say public space to a place, it should be used by anybody. If a place can't be used by everyone, this is not a public space, he says. And the public technology brought the concept of the New World Order, and this New World Order threatens the public spaces in urban spots, and these public spaces were getting a trade commodity as the time passes and the globalization continues. With the urbanization and globalization period, some big changes had been occurred in the process. The urban places and cities just increased their growth, and they had a distributed shape, actually. And the cities were not able to integrate their culture into the people, but they become a part of the globalized, capitalized world. And this thing caused the alienation of people from the environment, and the relationship with the city was the people. And the motor vehicles within caused the relationship between the buildings or parks effect on the memory of the citizens of a city, actually. In today's metropoles, we can state that these places are the places where one can experience the place, alienation for the place is among the most important things that arises on these metropolitan areas. So the urban transformation policies and changes in the area usage in the cities are main causes of this. So the public areas are losing their meaning as the time passes, and people starting to just protect their own memories. Some of the research are stating that the public space is losing its importance just because the public life is losing its importance. But some other researchers are in contrast with this opinion. Individuals who are trying to just make themselves fulfill themselves are trying to create new opportunities related with the public areas. So the public areas were used by the private institutions, and these places were used by the private institutions. As a result, these places are not deemed to be public areas, and some researchers state these places as so-called public areas. So the public areas were rented for having revenue, but this causes the alienation to the public spaces from the side of the citizens. And the public areas which would not be used easily and frequently as the real public space would be extincted definitely. So the public spaces should be democratic places, I think. I'm going to conclude my words like this. The members, citizens of this city, citizens of the cities should be able to use the streets, shores. I think this is a requirement for all of us, not just human, I think. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Feride hocam. She had talked about the alienation to the public spaces by the people, and with his last picture she just stressed the importance that everyone has the right for the public areas. And Osman hocam is going to talk about Agora. Hello. After two important keynotes, I am going to talk about the behaviors of the people, and I'm going to talk about the agora or agoraphobia. The term agora is coming from the ancient Greek. In the ancient Greek, it means the emptiness or void, agora. When the urbanization had started, the trade places or mutual usage areas were deemed to be agora at the ancient times. But the agora is a concept which started after the urbanization, and we see that people coming from village had established some behaviors in the agora, and this new public space had brought some problems on its own. The first of these problems is that turning back to the place where he feels himself safe, and he doesn't feel himself secure in this public space, and he go back to his own place where he thinks he's secure and firm. He had gone to his private property, to his own cave, to his own castle. He feels himself peaceful, but when he get out, he feels himself devastated, actually. So when we check the literature, Sennett is an important researcher who had talked about this. So also there are many researches that are related with the public areas losing their importance in Europe, and this public areas lost its importances too. Also the araba sevdası, the car law of a Turkish novel writer, is related with these public areas, actually. The problems are always the same, but the time spans are changing. And it is definitely related with the conditions of the country where the people live. I think you should just check this article. It is related with two different people in France and Paris. I believe it's really good example regarding the urbanization. So in regard to urbanization in the Ottoman Empire, we have some problems too, but in Paris there are two different characters as the public space and private space. We don't have much time, but I don't want to discuss these things in a broad manner. But when we get into a public space and we use the public spaces, people just develop some attitudes, some behaviors to protect himself. The restlessness occurs actually as a result. And he's like in conformity with the other people. They act like nothing is happening around. They are trying to protect themselves from the threats coming from outside. He's like playing that nobody is there. He's hearing nothing. And I think this is a really good term, civilian restlessness, for this. Mr. Ilyas also had made another sociology professor who had tried to understand this concept with the help of the concept of ego when we look at the Freudian approach to ego. Ego is related with our our needs to be satisfied, and superego is the limit that limits us, is the break that limits us within the community. For instance, we use the ego when we are along with ourselves, and we use the superego when we are within the community. In 1934, Mead has a very good definition and adds the public spaces to this definition. There are important other people. The concept of important other people are the people who audits and checks the public area. Generally, these are the people who just represents the community or represents the public, even though they don't have uniforms on themselves all the time. when we are in a public place, we are just not having eye contact or just don't want to harm other people, but these other people just controls us, and they act like the owner of these public spaces. And especially when it's like this, the people since the ancient Greek there are some things since the ancient Greek related with the public areas. If we believe that we are belonging to that very place, we don't have many problems related with the public spaces. I mean, our mother or our father, whatever is our role model, we just act like her or him. But if we face with problems in these social areas coming from the outside, we became anxious. We have increased heart rate, and we have such symptoms, and we go back to our home. This is called phobia. Phobia is a scaring. Agoraphobia is the phobia from the area. Aerophobia is the most common thing, phobia in the world, which is having a scaring from getting into plane. Agoraphobia is the fact that people getting scared about using the public space. So, what is the importance of agoraphobia, if you say? Ali Hocam had talked about post and pre-1980 period and the behaviors of the public areas. So when we get into the public area, we have some anxieties, and we need to have the opportunity to determine how we are going to act. It's not easy to be 100% relaxed in a strange environment. Either you are going to go back to your safe place, comfort zone, and then, or you're going to get into this place and face with your anxiety, and you're going to win against your phobia. But if we accept this as a psychological disorder, we need to make some studies about these phobias. The thing I want to say is that in the 19th century in Paris, Funeur, I think his name, or Flaneur, I'm not sure about the name, had the sociologists had just looked at the development of different people in the Paris. Mr. Flaneur had transformed from his old state and changed his attitude to today's life, but the people who are progressive actually now drinking their coffee in Istinye in Istanbul, let's say. So whatever happens, if we feel ourselves comfortable in the public zones and the public areas, and the auditors of the public area are not problematic for us, if this relaxation happens, then that's perfect for us. The agoraphobia is generally a problem for women, actually, since we have a gender problem in gender equality problem in Turkey. It is most common in women's and immigrants, and in general these public spaces, since these public spaces were used by males due to the patriarchal structure of the community, these things arises, and the women are experiencing bad things in the public spaces, I think, due to this fact, since we are a Middle Eastern society, kind of. A woman, if a woman is feeling relaxed herself within the public space, then this place is safe. But when the testosterone or the patriarchs or the men is in social space, then the rivalry would take place, the fights would take place. Related with agoraphobia, I used the agoraphobia for just defining the people's behaviors, but if people are losing their functionality and cannot even eat their meal in the outside and gets into home for doing everything, this is a mental disorder which called agoraphobia, and we should face with this, and the psychological support treatments should be done, and maybe if it's too necessary, the psychiatrical pills can be used, medications can be used, but the people's attitude and behavior is really important for preventing this problem of agoraphobia in the public space. And if we just become responsible out of the places where we live, we are going to run out and escape from this agoraphobia. For instance, in the rural parts of this Turkey, or the world, there are not much agoraphobia examples because they know, the people know each other. The civil restlessness is not used because these places are more peaceful for the inhabitants of that place. The urbanizations are causing problems. Since 2 years we are in the pandemics period, and people would not be able to use the social spaces during these 2 years. We couldn't even get to the parks. Now we are seeing that the youngsters or children who are starting to the school nowadays are really having problems when having interactions with each other due to thinking that the virus can be spread. I wish for everybody to not have new phobias throughout your life. Thank you so much, Osman Hocam. Osman Hocam had talked about the human psychology and the social space. Thank you so much. And now we are going to talk about, can everybody use the social spaces? Every person should access to the every point without the need to help of anybody else. Any person which is having problems, let's say an elderly people, a pregnant woman, should be able to do whatever it needs to be done to access to these public spaces. It is really important. A city can be elderly friendly if the life is easy for every people in a city. So the disabled people, in Turkey, more than 2.5 million disabled people in Turkey, and more than 20% of Turkish population is disabled people. The general 20% of the general population is going to be disabled, and 23 the elderly people with ages of more than 65 is reaching to more than 10% in our country, and our country is having an elderly population. As the time passes, we can state that we are seeing that the proportion of the elderly people are increasing as the time passes. And
when we look at the changing ages of the different profile, that they have different needs. They want to go outside, they want to work. And we aren't able to maintain. There are some changes, we have some lacking things. And the request of elderly and the handicapped must be met by cities. In 2006, there was a concept called the elder-friendly cities. The cities are generally planned, and after 1 or 2 during 1 or 2 years, and then there are 2 or 5 year action plans. So the World Health Organization provides support, information support, and know-how support. And there are 8 components that contribute to elderly friendly cities. The first one is the housing conditions. They must be designed taking into consideration the needs of the elderly. And taking into consideration the ergonomics of the elderly people. And this is a thesis that is defended by the World Health Organization. And transportation must be without any problems and at all hours for their independent living. And for the external public spaces and other buildings, green areas and pedestrian crosses, building entries and elevators must be elderly friendly. As for the fourth part, social participation, they should be supported. And for the fifth topic, respect in society. And on the sixth topic, participation to workforce is required for their both physical and mental health. The seventh topic and information. And the eighth topic is society support and health services. Elderly friendly city approach it consists of principles that contribute to life quality. And there are 533 cities in the network comprised of 533 cities in 37 countries and comprising 158 million people. Now I'll evaluate three main topics to increase the life quality of the elderly people. The first one is the roads and the avenues. Pedestrian pathways, pedestrian crosses, and walkways, the notices and signs, traffic signs, bus stops, buses, car parks, and the coatings of the floor tiles, floors, lighting and security must be elderly friendly. There should be some modification, for instance, not too high walkways, and for stairs there should also be a ramp. And these are the things that need to be taken into consideration. Lighting is another issue. For people who have low sight or no sight at all, for the handicapped, lighting is required both for their vision and for the vision of the people who might crash them. And there should be banquets in the parks and in the squares. There should be some exercise tools and areas. And there should be city furnitures, elderly friendly, handicapped friendly. There should be shopping and eating and drinking facilities and events. And there should be more events, a clean environment. Once again, the coatings of the floors, the tiles, lighting and security, again, in the parks and squares. There should be enough space between living areas. Should be easily accessible. These are very important for elderly people, and we felt that especially during the pandemic. And it should be designed in such way to promote elderly, encourage elderly to go outside in different it should be ergonomic for different kind of people and so on. There should be seating and banquets and socializing areas, walking and sports areas with nice view, clean environment, with floor tiles and coatings and lighting and secure places. These are very important issues. These are pretty much what I want to tell you. The only thing I'd like to highlight is that our surrounding environment, our pathways, our walkways, if they are suitable for everyone, then we'll have a better life quality. And we should take into consideration globalization, the design feature, and so on. And thank you very much for listening. This is pretty much the essence of what I want to convey you.